So while everybody may not believe in ghosts, I think a lot of people can admit to being haunted by a relationship. We fail to recognize how the residue of that energy is still showing up in our lives presently. So something I was thinking in terms of the residual haunt that is an old relationship, right? I think a lot of times we do talk about energy, right? We talk about energy so much and how much it is needed, and the concept of what energy is. It can't be created nor destroyed. It's just transferred from one place to the next. And I feel with relationships, we may not realize just how much energy is put into our relationships, but also how much energy will still exist after a relationship and how it may show up in your body, how it may show up in your thoughts, how it can even show up in your dreams. There is this concept of sleep paralysis. I don't know if you ever heard of it. And it's like, there's a scientific variation of what it is. But sometimes if you dig a little bit deeper, it talks about a spiritual aspect, and what that can mean. And if you experience it, what that may be signaling. Sometimes it's important to check in when you are having certain things play out in life. What is the energy that I've been feeling lately? If you had a previous relationship go south, or there might be a current relationship that has a lot of friction in it, have you ever noticed that there are also certain things taking place in your life too that may be indicating or at least matching how you feel about this particular person or particular occurrence or particular dynamic? We think about so much in a day that we are not always focused on what it is that we're thinking about. You hear a certain song, it brings up this person, you go to a certain restaurant or a particular movie, right? It's energy that's being applied to your thoughts around this person. And then when we think a little bit further about just there being a ghost in the room, truth be told, a lot of times people don't even realize that they keep bringing their past relationships to present moments. Get them talking, or there's a conversation being had, or there are even reservations that they have in terms of like, well, I don't want to either have what happened before take place, or am I doing a comparison and contrast between this previous relationship, previous friendship, and this present person? And when you start actually taking a look at what your energy is and what it's emitting, you'd also recognize what your energy is actually admitting. I am still struggling with this process, and or I am still finding ways to hold on to this person. Even when it comes to social media, it's so interesting how beneficial it has been as a tool, but it's also interesting how useful it has been to let people or let energy linger in our systems, in our bodies, in our lives, because we continue to be tethered to people in a certain way. Not so much where it is a definite relationship, but we can still examine, we can still surveil, right? Or they can surveil us. And we fail to realize that that is still energy being invested. That is still a different tethering that's taking place. This is recognizing, hey, what is the significance of me continuing to keep tabs on this person? Because think about it, let's say like you and a person break up and you decide, I'm gonna look at their internet, social media. I'm gonna keep tabs on what they're doing. I wanna see what they're up to. And you see that they're out having the time of their lives, or maybe they're with another person. Pay attention to how your body actually feels seeing that. It's almost like heartbreaking, it's a gut punch. When we understand that that is an energetic response that's taking place, how often are you doing that, right? If you think about how often am I checking this person's social media, how invested am I? How much energy am I putting into this relationship that's technically not active in my life, but I'm still keeping it tethered? It may even show up in your dreams. How often do you pay attention to what your dreams are saying? I'm a big advocate for dream interpretation and also just playing it out just from a psychological perspective, because I think being that we are invested in interacting with so much and so many things like music during the day, social media feed, our own personal obligations and responsibilities, there may be very important things that get kind of pushed down as the day goes on. I don't know how many thoughts a minute, But I was even talking to someone recently, and they were saying it's so crazy because while you're talking to a person, you never realize how many thoughts you have, but you don't even know how many thoughts the other person has. And they were like, you just had how many thoughts just now? I was like, actually, I did have a lot. And for me, I am always processing. Like, I am very much a processor. And when you are under stress, right, if you're subjecting yourself to this space, if you have a relationship that's unresolved, even though you're not thinking about it in that moment, it's still taking place in your body, still taking place in your subconscious, in your psyche. And it will come up in different. So if you ever pay attention to your dreams enough, sometimes certain things are playing out. And dreams are not always literal, but they will tell you a story. They will tell you a truth of some sort. They will provide a certain level of clarity, or at least a different perspective in terms of what you're dealing with and you're going on. If you have a lot of nightmares, it's cool to pay attention to, well, what have I been processing, or what have I been refusing to process or actually investigate or release. You don't have to believe in ghosts or even spirituality to recognize how relationships, even if they're not present in your life, are still impacting your current life. It impacts your mind, it impacts your heart, right? It impacts your biology. Because if someone left on bad terms, or you left this person on bad terms, or even you may be grieving, your body is still responding. And if you recognize, you can be sitting talking to another person, you probably haven't talked to that person in how long, but just thinking about them, your body responds to it. I can tell you, when you're not in a relationship with a person, if it was a mutual decision, if one person decided to just ghost, if there was just conflict, one of the worst things that you can do is still try to stay tethered to that relationship without necessarily taking any ownership of moving it forward or just being proactive. It's stale, and it just keeps being recycled. It's stagnant. If there's a stalemate, what am I willing to do about it? Because if I continue to surveil this person's life, then now I am kind of creating my own narrative, and I may not have all the pieces. And when I create my own narrative, a lot of times it's self-serving. Maybe I see this person worse than what they are. Maybe I perceive it as them having a better life than me, and then I start to get down on myself. Maybe I perceive them as looking at myself as them wanting to be with me or them coming back. And sometimes it's not the truth. Ask yourself, what kind of energy do I want to have on a day-to-day basis? And a lot of people say, yeah, good energy all around me, etc. What does that look like? Sometimes a person may think that if I avoid this person, or I'm protecting my peace without conversation, without clarity, without communication that's necessary, then you're kind of blocking everything that you say you desire. Energy needs to move, or sometimes it just needs to be recognized and defined as what it is. Because a lot of times we say we're protecting our peace, and in reality, we are just avoiding accountability. We are avoiding a conversation. And sometimes we are saying we seek clarity, but in actuality, we are seeking control, or we are trying to still stay tethered. How am I navigating this space for myself and for others? And pay attention to your subconscious mind too. Pay attention to how you are when no one's. I think I saw somewhere where it was saying that we are typically the most sensitive, or the realest conversations even will happen late at night, right? In the wee morning. So like 12 midnight, between 1 and 3 or something like that. And if you pay attention to that, pay attention to how your body feels. Pay attention to what you're feeling. More often than not, you're a little bit more vulnerable. You're a little bit more sensitive. And your guard is let down a little bit more. And that's usually a perfect time to just explore and tap in and see, hey, what is my energy? What have I actually been doing about it? How have I been distracting myself? Because if you've been trying to avoid certain things, it'll still creep up. And in your dreams, it shows up. And sometimes when we do certain things and we're moving a certain way, we're also giving people access to our energy that shouldn't have permission. Ask yourself, do I want my ex-partner, do I want my ex-friend to be actually watching me? Do I really want that attention from somebody who was not intentional with me? Because if we do, you'll get that, but it'll also start to feel weird. A person doesn't always need to be in our face and in our proximity, or us and theirs, to be affected. What am I consuming? What am I being consumed by? How is this freeing me up? If you are staying tethered emotionally and energetically to other people, it doesn't really leave room for new connections. Probably find familiar connections, right? You'll find connections that often replicate what it is that you have already experienced, and it keeps being a repetitive pattern. The reason why is because energy has not been cleaned up. When we take the time to genuinely think about what is actually going on in my body, what am I suppressing? What am I avoiding? What am I not acknowledging? What am I not taking full responsibility on? It will show. That's why I always say it's like no matter what I talk about, right? Whenever I talk about boundaries, whenever I talk about being intentional, whenever I talk about, just showing up, everyone has their take, right? Everyone has their perspective, everyone has their own experience, which is great because people are coming from different sides of it. And sometimes people are not the most honest, right? Not necessarily being honest with the public, but also being honest with themselves. But I always say the truth in how we function, the truth in how we show up, will also show up in every relationship that we exist in. Wherever you go is where you are. It is no denying that. So we can be in denial about how we're functioning or what we're doing, but our relationships will tell us the truth. And also kind of tell others the truth if they're perceptive enough. Sometimes there is still a ghost in the room as you are trying to get in contact. Right? You are keeping that ghost alive. You're keeping that spirit alive. Do you want that? And if a person does matter, it's okay to recognize, hey, yeah, this relationship matters to me. However, everything that I'm probably thinking about right now is not useful because none of it has happened. Right? I might be rethinking how things could have went. I might be creating scenarios in my head to self-soothe or make me feel better. But is that useful? Is that a constructive use of your energy? What is it creating for you? Because if it's falsifying information and that's what you're running on, it's not helpful. And get in the habit of trying to clean out your energy a little bit more. What am I participating in? If I'm doom scrolling to escape, if I'm keeping tabs on this person who probably shouldn't be in my life, if I'm trying to keep connected to people who I recognize may not feel the best for me, or I'm not doing my due diligence when it comes to other people, what is that creating for me? Because sometimes the residual haunt that you're experiencing is you not making peace with what's necessary. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Take inventory and take flight.